Right, so we are going here margins. Okay. The last remaining component of the element box is its margin, which is an optional amount of space that you can add on the outside of the border. Okay. Where margins keep element from bumping into another or the edge of the browser window. You can even use margins to make space for another column of content. Okay. In this way, margins are an important tool in CSS-based page layout. Okay. The side-specific shorthand margin properties work much like the padding properties we've looked at already. Trouble. However, margins have some special behaviors to be aware of. Okay. Browser default margins. You may have noticed that space is added automatically around the headings, paragraphs, and other block of elements that the browser's default style sheet at work. Okay, that's the browser's default style sheet at work, applying margin amounts above and below these elements. It's good to try to keep in mind that the browser is applying its own values for margins and padding behind the scenes. These values will be used unless you can specifically override them with your own style sheet. If you're working on a design and coming across mysterious amounts of space that you didn't add, the browser's default style sheet may be the culprit. One solution is to reset the padding and margin for all elements to 0, which is discussed. Okay, discussed here. So we have margin top, right, bottom, left, length and measurements, margin. Margin properties are very straightforward to use. You can either specify an amount of margin or appear on the each side, or use the margin properties to specify all of the side at once. The shorthand margin property works the same as padding shorthand. When you supply 4 values, they are applied in clockwise order. Then if you supply 3 values, the middle value applies to both left and right. And when you apply 2 value, the first is the top and bottom, the second is. Then if you apply 1, then it will be for all the sides. Okay. As for most web measurements, em, pixels, and percentage are the most common ways to specify margin. Be aware, however, if you specify percentage value, the percentage value is calculated based on the width of the parent element. If the parent width changes, so will the margins on all 4 sides of the child. Right. The auto keyword allows browsers to fill in the amount of margin necessary to uh, fit the available space. Okay. Figure 1417 shows the results of the following margin examples. Note that I've added a light dotted rule to indicate the outside of the edge of the margin for clarity purposes, but they would not appear on a real web page. Okay, so we have we have added a margin of 4 em on all sides. Then I have top this. Okay, then I have with the body we have added margin of 0 on top and bottom and 15% on left and right. Okay, 0% on top and bottom and 15% on left and right. Okay, the adding margins to the body puts space between the element. Adding margins to the body puts space between the element and the edges of the wing area. Now the red border shows the boundary of the body element. Red border, I cannot see the red border, there is no padding applied. Red border shows the boundary of the body element, there is no padding applied. Okay, red border here. Alright. Margin behavior. Although it is easy to write rules that apply margin amounts around HTML elements, it is important to be familiar with some of the quirks of margin behavior. Collapsing margins. The most significant margin behavior to be aware of is that the top and bottom margins of the neighboring elements collapse. This means that instead of accumulating, adjacent margins overlap and only the largest value will be used. Using the two paragraphs from the previous figure as an example, if the top element has a bottom margin of 4 em and the following element has a top margin of 2 em, okay, The resulting margin space between element does not add up to 16. Rather, the margin collapse and the resulting margin between will be 4 em. Okay. The largest specified value. Okay, so margins collapse. Vertical margins of neighboring element collapse so that so the only larger value is used. Collapsing margins. Okay, when spacing between and around elements. Okay, when spacing between and around element behaves unpredictably, collapsing margins are often to blame. Okay, here are few articles that dig deep into collapsing margin behavior. They were written nearly a decade ago, but the information is still solid and may help you understand what is happening behind the scenes in your layouts. Okay. The only time top and bottom margins don't collapse is for floated or absolutely positioned elements. Margins on the left and right side never collapse, so they are nice and predictable. Okay. Margins on inline elements. You can apply top and bottom margins to inline text or non-replaced inline elements to use proper CSS terminology, but it won't add vertical space above and below them, and the height of the line will not change. However, when you apply left and right margins to inline text element, margin space will be held clear before and after the text in the flow of element, even if the element breaks over several lines. Okay. So just to keep things interesting, I should wait. Hold up. This is important. Okay, just to keep things interesting, margins on replaced elements such as images do not render on all sides and therefore do affect the height of the line. See? Okay, so we have this. Only horizontal margins are rendered on non-replaced elements. Okay, margins are rendered on all sides of replaced elements such as images. Okay. So negative margins. It is worth noting that it is possible to specify negative values for margins. When you apply a negative margin, the content, the padding and the border are moved in the opposite direction that would have resulted from a positive margin. Okay. This should be made clear with an example. 1420 shows two neighboring paragraphs with different colored borders. The margin so we have P top margin bottom is 4 em. Okay, and here margin bottom is minus 4 em, so it should move above. This moves negative side. Okay, in the left I've added 4 em bottom margin to the top paragraph, and it has the effect of pushing the following paragraph down by that amount. If I specify a negative value, the following element moves up. Okay. This may seem like a strange thing to do, and in fact you probably wouldn't make blocks of text overlap as shown. The point here is that you can use margins with both positive and negative values to move elements around on the page. This is the basis of many CSS layout techniques. Now let's add some margin space between the parts of a Genware home. Okay. So open genware.html. This is exercise 14.3. Alright, so first we'll start by adjusting the margin on the whole document and then make tweaks to each section from top to bottom. It is common practice to set the margin of the element to 0, thus clearing out the browser's default margin and setting and creating point for setting our own margins on the element page. Okay. Save the file and take a look in the browser. I like the way the purple navigation bar stretches from the edge to edge of the. Okay, hold up. Let me. Okay, so we'll go with this. This is default, right? Okay, then when I set, where is body? This is background, body. Okay. So I'll go margin 0. Then what happens here? Okay, so it just okay, so it touches whole, right? So it touches all. Okay. So save the file and take a look in the browser. I like the way the purple navigation bar stretches from edge to edge of the browser window, but I think we need to tweak our other content areas. Start with intro div and add 2 em margin on top and 1 em below. I also want to close up. Okay, this is I also want to close up the space between the logo and the tagline, so set the bottom margin of H1 to 0 and the top margin of H2 to -10 pixels. So with an intro, I set margin and the intro div. Okay, so I go margin is it should not. I want 2 em on the top, 0 on the bottom, and 1 0 on the left and right, and 1 on the bottom. Okay, so let me take a look. What changes are here? Okay, intro section, uppercase. I think this is the new products. Yes. Okay, can I jump to this section? Hash and show. How can I, all references? Huh. Okay, can I generate C tags for this? Okay, and then can I? No. To section. Where is the right? Why can't I find the definition for like div? There's a div with intro and it has the logo and generate logo. Make it personal. Okay, so this we are talking about this, and I have set. Okay. So before. Okay. So what is the change before the margin? Right. Okay, so we are providing some on the top and the bottom. Okay, so now they are a little. Alright, so then we move on to this H1. I want the bottom margin. Okay, so between the logo and the tagline, I also want to close up the space between the logo and the tagline. Okay, logo and the tagline. So I'm setting the H1 margin bottom to 0. Okay, so setting show H1 margin bottom to 0. Okay, so we moved it up a little bit, then okay, so then H0 and the top of the margin of h1 to minus 10 h2 to minus 10 pixel. Like this is h2, so this will top right minus, so it will bring it closer. h2. Okay. Bro, this won't work on h2 is make it personal. Okay, so h1 is the image and h2 is make it personal. So for h2, if I make the top minus, so it will come closer. Okay. Margin top is minus as 10 pixel. There we go. Okay. And all around the tagline, nice applause. Finally, I put a 1 EM margin all around the introductory paragraph. Okay. So I putting 1 EM margin all around this paragraph. Okay. See, I want a margin of 1 EM. There we go. Not much difference, but that's okay. Okay, then give the product section 1 EM margin all around. Okay, so where are products? The products I'm giving a margin of 1 EM. These are the products, right? Okay, so it is 1 EM on all sides. Then now add 2.5 EM space above the product subsection H3. Okay. Section H3. By this point, I bet you could write this one without my help. But for the sake of thoroughness, here's the new declaration added to H3s in the product section. You can try different amount of space and see what you like best. Okay, so H3. Right, these are H3s. Let me see what are H3 in product. Product H3 is barware, okay, baby wear, okay. So basically these things, these are H3s, and I don't have a H1 within a div. Okay. This is local too. It's on okay H3, so I am adding H3 one around all the headings. So product H3, add a margin. Where do I have to add a margin? Margin on the top of these. Okay, so these are little separated. There we go. Okay. Then finally we'll set apart the testimonial. Finally, we'll set apart the testimonials box by adding 1 EM space above and 10% of the left and right edges. This time, if you can figure it out on your own, that's easy. Space. Okay, 1 EM of space above and 10% on the left and right edges. That's easy. Okay, and testimonials, right? We'll jump to testimonials. I want padding 1 EM on top T, 10% on left and right, and 0 on the bottom. Left and right 10%. Okay, right, trouble TRBL 10%. right? With 1 em space above and 10% of the left and right edges. Okay, so it should be like this. So if you can see the, okay, I got 1 em here, but I didn't padding. Oh, sorry, I'm not adding padding. I'm adding a margin. Okay, 1 em, 10% and 0. There we go. Okay. Save the document and it should look like something here. This is in the most beautiful design, particularly if your browser window is set wide. However, if you resize the window, browser window very narrow, you'll find it won't be too bad as the small screen version is a responsive design. Consider the foreshadowing for the work we'll do in chapter 18. Okay, the final style sheet is available in appendix there. Okay, so if I resize, alright, so there we go. Okay. A good understanding of padding, borders and margin is the first step to mastering CSS layouts. In the next chapter, we'll learn about properties used to float and position element on the page. We'll even turn the Genware page into a 2-column layout. But before we move on, there are a couple of more box related properties to get out of the way. Assigning display roles. As long as we're talking about boxes and the CSS layout model, this is a good time to introduce the display property. So I want to do some exercises for beginners, right? As long as we're talking about boxes and the CSS layout model, this is a good time to introduce the display property. You should already be familiar with the display behavior of block and inline element. However, not all XML languages assign default display behaviors or display roles to use proper terms for the CSS specification to the display behavior display role to the elements they contain. For this reason, the display property was created to allow others to specify how elements should behave in this layout. Okay, so display inline block list item, inline block table, inline table, table row group. Okay, so the display property defines the type of element box an element generates in the layout. In addition to the familiar inline and block display roles, you can also make element display as a list items or various parts of a table. Okay. As you can see from the list of values, there are a lot of roles an element can play, but there are only a handful that are used in everyday practice. In general, the W3C discourages the random reassigning of display roles for HTML elements. However, in certain scenarios, it is benign and has even become commonplace. For example, it's common practice to make a list element, which is usually display characteristic of block element, display as an inline element to turn into a list of horizontal navigation bars. Right. You may also make an otherwise inline anchor element display as a block in order to give it a specific width and height. Okay. So navigation, all and their list items are these. Then another useful value for the display property is none, which removes the content from the normal flow entirely. Unlike visibility, hidden, which just makes the element invisible but holds the space it would have occupied blank. Display none removes the content and space it would have is occupied is closed up. Okay. One popular use of display none is to prevent certain content in the source document from displaying in specific media, such as when the page is printed or displayed on devices with smaller screen. For example, you could have a paragraph that appears when the document is printed, but it is not part of the page when it is displayed on a computer screen. Okay. And warning. Warning. Bear in mind that changing the presentation of an HTML element with the CSS display property does not change the definition of that element as a block level or inline element. Putting a block level element within an inline element will always be invalid regardless of its display role. Okay. Warning: be aware that the content that has its display set to none still downloads with the document. Setting some content to display none for devices with small screens may keep the page shorter, but it is not doing anything to reduce the data usage or download times. Okay. Adding a drop shadow to boxes. We have we have text shadows. Okay. We've arrived at the last stop. Really? Okay. We have arrived at the last stop on the element box tool. In chapter 12, formatting text, you learned about text shadow property, which adds a drop shadow to text. The box shadow property, new in CSS3, applies a drop shadow around the entire visible element, excluding the margin. Okay. So we have horizontal offset, vertical offset, blur distance, and spread distance, color, and inside and out. Okay. The value of the box shadow property should seem familiar after working with text shadow. Specify the horizontal and vertical offset distances, right? The amount of shadow should blur and a color. Box shadows, you can also specify a spread amount which increases or decreases with negative values. The size of the box shadow. By default, the shadow color is the same as the foreground color of the element. But specifying a color overrides it. Okay. And figure 1422 shows the result of following code examples. The first adds a simple box shadow of 6 pixels to the right and 6 pixels down. Okay, 6 pixels right, 6 pixels down. Right, okay. Without blur or spread. The second adds a blur. Okay, there's a blur. The box shadow. So we have 6 verticals, 6 and 5 pixel blur. And this shows the effect of 10 pixel spread value. Box shadows are always applied to the area outside the border of the element, okay, or the place it would be if a border. Okay. So box, if the element has a transparent or translucent background, you will not see the box shadow in the area behind the element. Okay, you can make the shadow render inside the the edges of the visible element by adding the inset keyword to the rule. This makes it look like the element is pressed into the screen. Okay. As for text shadow, you can specify multiple box shadows on an element by providing the values in a comma separated list. The values that come first get placed on top and the subsequent shadows are placed behind it in order which they appear in the list. Okay. The box shadow property is supported by all current version browsers, with the exception of Opera Mini for mobile. To accommodate recent WebKit's browsers, Safari Mobile, Safari Chrome, Android, and older version of Firefox as of this writing, it is recommended that you include the vendor prefixed properties as shown in this example. Internet Explorer 9 and higher support the standard property, but IE 6 through 8 doesn't support it at all. My opinion is that it isn't the end of the world if the users of those old browsers don't see a nifty little drop shadow. If you must have shadows in old IE versions, you will need to use the proprietary IE filter property as explained here. Okay, so then we have an inset. Okay, warning. Box shadows, text shadows, and gradients take a lot of processor power because you are shifting the burden of the interpreting and rendering them onto the browser. The more you use, the slower performance will be, and as we all know, performance is everything on the web, so go easy on them. Alright, so then we move on to test yourself. At this point, you should have a good feel for element boxes and how to manipulate and space within and around them. These are the raw tools you'll need to do real CSS based layouts. Okay. In the next chapter we'll start moving the boxes around on the page, but first why not get some practice at writing rules for padding, borders and margin in the following test. Okay. In this test, your task is to write the declarations that create effects shown in each example. Okay, 1424. All the paragraphs shown here share a rule that sets a dimension and the background color for each paragraph. Dimension background. You only need to provide the box related property declarations. Answer are always here. Some useful opinions. Outer margin edges are indicated by dotted lines. All necessary measurements are provided in red, and borders use one of the 17 standard color names. Okay, so right, we have this. All of this samples exercised out with the style here. So we background this width and height. Okay, so we are just adding a double border here, right? Adding a border style double, right? I think that is it. Okay, we have border style is double, then we have a border with a shadow. And a solid border. Okay, so border style, I think it's border bottom style solid. Style is solid, and then I have a box shadow. I do have a box shadow, but it is also cutting. Okay, let me go bottom style. Border style, yeah, border bottom style. It is solid, right? Border bottom style. Border bottom style is of solid. Then what is that? That it just limits. What is this green thing here? This looks like a. Okay, maybe this is the border, right? Let me go to border style. It should have a ridge. Okay, this is inset and this is outset. Okay, this is double dotted dashed groove ridge inset outset. What do you think this is? I have a border ball. Dude, I don't know. Okay, let me go to the appendix. Chapter 14. Okay, so this is double black medium, border double black medium. Okay, black. Okay, so border style is double, that I got. Then I have to specify. Okay, so this is scroll. Okay, this is the scroll bar. Okay, this is the scroll bar. All right. Bro. Um. Okay, then we have. Okay, so this was we have the border style. I think I'm gonna have to revise once. Okay, some borders, right? Then I go with padding. Okay, I'll start with padding. Okay, so this is visible. This is scroll. Yes. Okay. So overflow, handling overflow. Overflow is scroll, right? Okay. So visible scroll, short, long. Okay, so it was short. Okay, got it. So it was specified as scroll, right? Okay, padding. Then padding, we have padding top right. What does padding do? Okay, so it adds this padding around the border. Okay, so this is top left padding. Trouble padding. Okay, padding is content and the border. Then I have the border. Then I have border style, dotted, right? Border style, double. Then border width, which is medium, thin, thick. Okay, so this is medium, this is thin, this is thick. Okay, so border color, right? Okay, so we have to define border color combining style width. So we have border, style, width, and color. Okay, so style, width, and color. Okay, so this is padding between the content, between the and the height. Okay, so this should be border. First we provide the style, then we provide the sorry, what do we provide? No, double is right. Then we provide the width, right? Or do we provide width? Okay, I think I can provide the width here. So this is medium width, and color is black, right? I hope I've done it right. Margins, background. Okay, so this is the background. Rounded corners with border. Yes, combining. So style, width, and color. Okay, I'm right. Style, width, and then color. Okay, so this is okay. So this is basically overflow as scroll. This basically gives me this. If I'm not correct. Oh shit. Okay, so this should be overflow scroll. Yes. Can I just know what page number is this? 591. Okay. 591. Okay. So this is easy. Padding. It is just padding of 2 em on all sides. Then this is padding of 2 em on all sides. Okay. So padding of 2 em on all sides, and then border uh, is style is solid. This is medium, and the color is red. Okay. Then I have the border is solid, medium and red in color. Then the margin is 2 mm on all sides, right? Okay. Right. So I have, this is dotted or dashed. I think this is a dashed border. Okay, so I have padding. Okay, so I'll start with padding first. Padding, I have a 1 em padding on top, right? On top and bottom. Okay, so I left and right needs to be different. So treble. Okay, so I'll go with right as 1 em, then bottom. Treble, bottom is also 1 em. And then finally 6 em for this. Okay, so wait, if we specify only 2, then right, padding 1 em, 1 em, 1 em, then I have a okay, so I can go with then I specify the border, which is what is the color? This is, I think, dashed with medium thickness and black color. Then I have a margin, which is top and bottom is 1 em and 6 em on left and right. Okay, 4 pixels. Okay, so this is 4 pixels. So this is 4 pixels. This is 4 pixels. Okay, then this is 4 pixels again. Margin. Okay, how can't I do? No, if I provide 3, then yeah, no, 3. I have to provide 4. Okay. And then finally this one. So first padding is 1 em on top and bottom, 50 pixels on left and right. Then the border is what is this? Aqua, I suppose. Okay. So we have the style is solid, width is 2 pixel, and uh, it's aqua, and then margin. I have a margin on left and right. So 0 on the top and bottom, and left and right I have a margin of what? Okay, and margin, huh, and overflow is scroll. Margin overflow, scroll, what? Okay, I don't know about this, so let's check with this one, right? See, see, padding 2 em. Then padding 2 em, so in border, solid 4 pixel red. Padding 2 em, 4 pixel solid red. Yes. Then I have border solid 4 pixel red and margin 2 em. Margin 2 em, border 4 pixel solid red. Then I have this margin 111. Then then I have Okay, so 1 em dashed 4 pixel black and margin 1 and 6 em. Okay, 1116 4 pixel dashed 4 pixel dashed, color is I given the color, margin 1 em 6 em. Basically the okay, padding left. Okay, so padding left. Okay. And then finally I have this. And then I have this, padding 1 em and 50 pixels. Then you have border of solid 2 pixels aqua. Okay, no black. Solid 2 pixels aqua and then margin. Okay, so I have to go with teal. Margin is 0 and auto. Okay, so this is margin was 0. Okay, so automatically handles. Okay, 0 on top end. Okay, I got it. Okay, so it's teal. I'm not good with colors. Whatever. So it is teal, and this is 0 and auto. Okay, because as most default to scroll for auto. Right. Okay. Then we have border, shortened property, top border top right, bottom left, border color, border top color, border image, then border radius for curves, right, border top left radius, border style, specific style, border width, okay. Then box sizing, width, specific dimension you apply content box shadow, then we have display height, margin top, max height, overflow property doesn't fit in the content area. Then I have padding top width. Okay. Then we move on to chapter 15, floating and positioning. At this point you've learned dozens of CSS properties that allow you to change the appearance of text elements and the boxes they generate. But so far, we've mainly been decorating elements as they appear in the flow of the document. In this chapter, we'll look at floating and positioning, the CSS method for breaking out of the normal flow and arranging elements on the page. Floating an element moves it to the left or right and allows the following text to wrap around it. Positioning is a way to specify the location of an element anywhere on the page with pixel precision. Okay. We'll start by examining the properties responsible for floating and positioning, so you'll get a good feel for how the CSS layout tools work. In chapter 16, page layout with CSS, we'll broaden the scope and see how these properties are used to create common multi-column page layouts. Okay. Before we start moving elements around, let's be sure we are well acquainted with how they behave in a normal flow. In the normal flow. Okay. Normal flow. We've covered the normal flow in previous chapters, but it's worth a refresher. In the CSS layout model, text elements are laid out from top to bottom in the order which they appear in the source, and from left to right, the left to right reading languages. Okay. Block elements stack up on top of one another and fill the available width of the browser window or containing element. Inline element and text characters line up next to one another to fill the block element. Okay. When the window containing element is resized, the block element expands or contracts to new width, and the inline content reflows to fit figure 15.1. Right. Hebrew, the normal flow is top to bottom and right to left. Blocks are laid out in the order in which they appear in the source. Each block starts on a new line. Inline content reflows to fit the width of the block. Block fills the available width. Then one more example in the normal flow behavior. Right. Okay. So objects in the normal flow affect so objects in the normal, okay, what is this? Dealing with browser bugs. This is a good time to address the unfortunate topic of browser bugs. This book presents the way CSS is supposed to work, but in reality, desktop and mobile browsers have the bugs that make some aspects of CSS layout a headache. In the past, the main culprit was Internet Explorer 6. It had bugs so well known that we gave them cute names like the Guillotine bug and the Pickaboo bug, the double float margin bug and the 3 pixel cap bug, just to name a few. These bugs have been fixed in later versions of IE and are no longer an issue. IE6 represents less than 1% of the browser use in United States as of this writing. So most developers do not jump through hoops to cater to its peculiarities. If you do need to support old IE versions, the position is everything. Site is the place to go for fixes. Okay. Before you start doing a happy dance in some way, we may be in a worse spot today. Not only are there multitudes of browsers running on all sorts of devices, but the bugs tend to be more esoteric and less easily predicted. I will certainly point out when a property is known to cause fuzzy browser behavior. By the time you are reading this, the offending browsers may already be off radar. The best advice I can give you is to test your designs on as many browsers and devices as you can get your hands on and fix things that appear to be broken. Web searches for particular properties or browser plus bugs usually turn to posts by developers having similar problems or offering potential workarounds. You can also check the CSS Discuss wiki, which archives known bugs for all browsers in addition to boatloads of other useful CSS information. So we'll get to it next time.